If you actually believe that working out alone will get you into shape, you are wrong. And you will never be able to make any progress towards your dream physique. I started last year off in the absolute worst shape of my entire life. I was weighing 270, coming off of 2 injuries, which kept me away from working out for over 3 months. Now, the biggest mistake I made during that time was to go off the rails with my food completely. Alright, I was just eating whatever I wanted, and in those 3 months, I gained a total of 30 pounds because I didn't care anymore. I couldn't work out, so I didn't care. I just ate whatever I wanted because in my head I was thinking it isn't going to change anything anyways because I'm not fueling my workouts, I'm not able to grow any muscle mass, so why would I even stick to my meal plans anymore? And up until that point, I was doing amazing. I was in a slight calorie surplus because I was actively trying to gain mass and also strength during a bulking phase. So I got up to 230, staying relatively lean, but then as soon as those injuries came in, everything crumbled. I became depressed. I didn't care anymore, and I still remember how I was laying down in my bed. This is crazy because I still remember the exact moment I realized I needed to change something. So I just came to the United States. For those of you that don't know, I am from Germany. I decided to move to the United States to follow my dreams of making it in the fitness industry, of making content, coaching people, building my personal brand here, right? So I just made it to the United States, and I had gone through the first injury. I arrived there, second injury happened. I partially tore my upper chest, which, led me to not being able to work out at all because the other injury was an adductor tear. So lower body was cooked, upper body was cooked, and I could have still done cardio and all of that stuff, but I was so disappointed. I was so depressed because the main reason I came to the US was because I wanted to make it in the fitness industry. And then, as you know, the US has all of these fast food places. I started eating and eating and eating way, way more out of frustration. And then at one evening, the new Witcher season came out. I watched that season. I ordered Wingstop and I had a big package of Sour Patch Kids. Like, I'm talking this big, right? I had the Wingstop, like 12 wings all by myself with the fries, dipped it into the ranch as well. I had the Sour Patch Kids. I was eating those, laying down in bed with my laptop on my lap, like right here, just laying down, and all that fat in my stomach area was just, rolling up, and I could see how big it was actually getting. And that is when I decided that even though I was injured, I had to change something. So immediately on the next day, I started getting on structured meal plans again that put me into a calorie deficit. And I knew that that was all I needed to do because before getting those injuries, I had already been working out for 5 years, and I had been working as a personal trainer, an online coach at gyms, working with people, helping them get in shape, and even I was in way better shape before. I had a shredded six-pack. I was lifting 500 pounds on deadlifts, 400 on squats, and 315 on bench as well. And I had studied nutrition and training into its very details so I could make the most progress possible, and I could also get my clients the most progress possible. So I knew that all I needed to do was just to get back into a calorie deficit, get on structured meal plans, and start executing those. The main thing that was holding me back was my mindset. And I just made a video on that explaining the exact mental framework I used to get back into the best shape of my life. So if you haven't seen that yet, go ahead and check that out. But obviously there is way more to it than just being in a calorie deficit, all right? If you want to have a successful cutting phase where at the end you're actually still big, you look jacked, you have a lot of muscle mass on you, and you're not just getting rid of all the muscle, you're not dieting away all that muscle that you've built in the bulking phase, you have to take care of meal timing, you have to be super precise with your macronutrients, and you also have to spread out your calories evenly throughout the day because this increases your muscle protein synthesis and it just helps you so much with recovery as well. So there's a lot of things that you actually have to take care of with your meal plans because just getting into a calorie calorie deficit won't cut it. Now in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how I set up my own meal plans to go from 270 to 205 to get into the absolute best shape of my life. And I'm also going to show you how I set up my clients' meal plans so that they can get into the best shape of their lives. It's going to be a full breakdown with actionable steps that you can apply to your own situation so you can start losing fat immediately. And the best thing about it is that I'm going to walk you through the exact framework, and at the same time I'm also going to hand out a meal plan to you so that you have the template and all you have to do is just make adjustments based off your current situation. So let's get right into it. Okay, so before you do anything else, you have to calculate your calorie intake and your macronutrient intake. And there's two ways to do this. The first way is to go on the internet, type in calorie calculator, and then use 3 of those calculators, and then you build the average out of those 3, because one can be pretty inaccurate. I would rather use 3 and get 3 different options. You want to have different opinions or different calculations, and based off what they tell you, you just build the average of that and then you go with that. So that is option number 1 that you could go with. But the more convenient one, and also the one that we are going to use in this example, is going to be with ChatGPT, because ChatGPT has access to all the formulas that we need. So all we need to do is basically plug in our information. Then we tell the ChatGPT what it's supposed to do to put us into a calorie deficit, and then it will tell us exactly how many calories we would have to eat in order to get into that calorie deficit. So I'm going to share my screen with you here and walk you through exactly how you have to do this. So to get started with this calculation, you need a couple stats, and I have them all listed right here on my notes. So to get started with this calculation, you need a couple stats, and I have them all listed right here on my notes. So you're going to need your age, your height, your current weight, and then also your activity level, all right? In this case, I'm just doing an example. These are random numbers, but that's what we're going to use today. So you're going to have 10K steps every single day as your baseline. You're going to have 5 hypertrophy workouts per week. Age 22, height 6'1", and then the weight is going to be 220 right now. This right here we're going to use later, and this as well. But we'll start this off by just copying all of this information. Then we go over to ChatGPT, open up a new tab, and then we are going to type in, hey, these are my stats right now. Please calculate my BMR, that is your base metabolic rate, and this means that is the amount of calories that you burn on a daily basis without doing anything else. So this is your baseline, all right? This is you just existing with those current stats. That's not including the workout, not including the 10K steps. This is just good to know, to see what you are actually burning when you do absolutely nothing. So we want to get the BMR, right? Please calculate my BMR and my TDEE. The TDEE is what you burn with the steps included and also with your workouts included. So this number will be higher. This will take into account all the extra calories that you're burning from those two things. So please calculate my BMR and my TDEE. That's all we need right now. So you're going to plug in your information and you just let ChatGPT work. This should be a pretty quick one. Oh, I actually didn't put in the gender. That's my bad. So I am male in this example. Now, as I already said, it plugs it all into the formulas that we would have to use on our own as well. So it's basically just doing the work for us. And once you've had some experience coaching other people and looking at their current stats, and your lean body mass also plays a role in that, because if you have more muscle on your frame, you're naturally going to burn more calories even when you're resting. So experience plays a big role in how accurate you are going to be with this, because then you can kind of, change the numbers at the end when ChatGPT has them all, but this will give you a super good estimate of what you should be working with. Now let's see what it has for us. So we have the TDEE, where is it? BMR is about 2,500 calories in this case, and the TDEE is at around 3.2K. So these are two numbers that we can already write down, okay? BMR, remember this one. I'm just going to put that right here. BMR is going to be that right there, and your TDEE is going to be this. Now that we have those numbers, the next step is going to be to tell it exactly how much weight you want to lose in a certain time frame. So if you've watched the mental framework video that I made about, what mental framework you have to use in order to actually get back into shape after letting yourself go, you would know that you need a precise goal. You need a weight loss goal and then also a time frame. In this example, I'm going to use, what is it? You want to go from 220 to 180 in 6 months. Now, the cool thing about this is that we don't have to calculate the calorie deficit ourselves. ChatGPT is going to do exactly that. So now we're going to tell it that we want to get into a calorie deficit that will lead us to be at 180 in 6 months from now. Now, I haven't made the calculations in my head, but let's just see what happens. Please put me into a calorie deficit. Please put me into a calorie deficit. I want to go from 220 to 180 in 6 months. Please make sure that you have different calorie intakes for training days and rest days. 200 calorie difference, because I want to eat more on training days to have slightly better workouts. So this is super important, because when you're dieting, you want to have as much energy as possible on your training days, because when you can keep up the performance in those workouts, your body is going to maintain all the muscle that you currently have, and it might also be able to build muscle mass depending on how well you're doing with the workout program that you're currently running. So make sure that those workouts are always on track. Now, let's see what we got right here. Goal, about 1.5 pounds per week. So we could have made those calculations on our own, right? But it's already telling us exactly how many calories that would be. So the calorie deficit that we would have to go into would be about 700 to 750, and that is still in a good range. Now let's go further down, and where is it? Here we go. We have the exact numbers for training days and then also for rest days. Now for the macros, I'm going to do that in a second here on my own. I'm going to tell it exactly what we want, but we have the calorie intake for the training days and then also the rest days. Now with that amount of calories, as you could already see, the deficit is going to be 750, I think. And this is still a good deficit to be in. This is not too much. Everything above that would be too high. And that is also why I always tell you guys, when you're going on the cut, set attainable goals. All right, don't say you want to lose 100 pounds in 6 months. That's going to be nearly impossible, because you're going to have to starve yourself to get to that point and do so much cardio that your hormones are going to crash massively. So don't do this. This is also the only way that by the end of your cut, you're actually going to look good. You're actually going to have the muscle mass that you want to have. at the end of your cut. So make sure that the deficit is around 500 to 750. You could also tell it right now that, hey, I want to go a little slower. I want to do 500 instead of 750, even if that means I'm not going to lose those 40 pounds in 6 months. But since we have that goal of 40 pounds, it's going to be a deficit of about 750, which is absolutely fine. Okay, that range, 500 to 750, all of that is perfectly fine. Now we have those numbers right here. And what we are going to do next is just tell it the next step. So let's go back to the notes. Go on this one. This is the split that I use myself, that I use for all my clients as well. 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein. Let me just plug that in. Now, please adjust the macros as follows for both days. 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, that is the absolute best way to go about this, because protein acts as the building blocks of your muscles. So you could imagine that when you are already in a calorie deficit, when you are already systematically starving your body in order to lose more fat, it will need all the protein possible in order to actually fuel your muscles recovery. So 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein is what you have to do here. Now, after that, 25% of total calories coming from fats. These are going to be healthy fats like avocado, olive oil, nuts, dark chocolate, eggs, ribeye, all that good stuff, right? And with those, you're making sure that your hormones are actually working properly. And then the rest of your calories is going to be made up of carbs. Carbs are also the macronutrient. Macronutrients are these 3, right? Protein, fat, and carb. Carbs are the macronutrient that you're going to cut during a dieting phase, because as you just learned, protein is extremely important to maintain, repair, and build muscle. Fat is extremely important for your hormones, and carbs, those are just there for energy, all right? They fill up your muscles, they fill up your glycogen stores, and they provide you with energy for the day and then also for your workout, which is also why I said on training days, you should keep your calorie intake higher, and this difference is going to come only from those carbs. So I'm just going to tell ChatGPT that thing as well. Make sure that on training days and rest days, the difference is only coming from carb intake. Now send that out, and it's going to give you the exact macronutrients that you're going to take in on your training days and on your rest days, and then you basically have everything that you need. So you have your calorie intake, you have your macronutrient intake, and the next step is going to be a bit more tricky, because yes, we need all of this information, but now we actually have to put it into actionable meal plans. So as you can see right here, training day calories, you have your protein intake stays the same, you have your fat intake, it did change it up slightly, which is fine, and then you have your carb intake, which is slightly lower on your rest days. Now let me actually write all of those numbers down real quick so we can use that later on here. For the training day, I like to use my notes just because it's super convenient. So for the training day, we're going to use this amount of calories. P is going to be 220 grams. Fat is going to be 72 grams, and then carbs is going to be 264. And then on your rest day, you're going to have 2.38k calories. P is going to be 220 Gs. Then we have fat at 66, and then we have carbs at 226 grams. Now, another thing that is super important to understand for you, which I'm going to teach you now, is that your macronutrients, they make up the calories, right? They make up the total calories that you see up there. And protein has 4 calories per gram. same as carbs. Carbs have 4 calories per gram as well, while fat has 9 calories per gram. So you still want to have that fat intake for hormonal functions, but that is also why so many people, like here in the United States, for example, so many people are obese because their fat intake is just extremely high through all that fast food that they have available, all that deep fried stuff that increases the amount of calories drastically. So you want to have that in a good range, in a healthy range, all right? Now, that being said, we can make our own calculations, but we can also just let ChatGPT do the work for us. So let's just say, please give me the calories for each macro. Oh, I misspelled that, but it should be, yeah, coming up right there. So you can see 880 calories are coming from protein, 648 coming from fat, and 1.05 coming from your carbohydrates. Now down here, same thing with the protein, with the fats going to be a bit less, and then with your carbs it's going to be 904 calories. And that is all you need to get started, all right? So if you're doing your own meal plans, or if you're going to use the template that I'm going to hand out to you later on, please make those calculations for yourself. You cannot use what I have here on my screen, all right? You are a different human being. You are not 22 years of age. You're not 6'1", you're not 220, you're not male. These stats are going to be different for you. So plug in your own information and then follow the steps that I just laid out for you, all right? Put in your information, then tell it to give you your BMR and your TDEE, and then in the next step, you're going to say, hey, I want to lose this amount of weight in this time. Please calculate my calorie deficit. Please calculate the calorie intake I have to have on training days and on rest days with about a 200 calorie difference so I can have more energy on my training days. And then as the third and final step of this, you're going to plug in the macronutrients that you want. So 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, 25% of total calories coming from fats, and then the rest of your total calories is going to come from carbs. And then with those numbers that you have at the very end, you can move on to step 2, which is going to be making sure that you actually have the right meal plan structure. Okay, now that we have all our stats, now that we have the exact calorie intake and also the macronutrient intake that we will need in order to get into the best shape of our life, we want to make sure that before we add any food, you have the right structure with your meal plans, because this plays a huge role. All right, you can't just eat twice per day. You can't just eat one time in the morning, then one time in the middle of the day, and then one time in the afternoon. To be optimal, to get the best results, you need to do things differently. So first of all, you want to split up your total calorie intake in at least 4 meals per day, all right? 4 is the minimum. You can do more than 4 if you have the time to eat more often throughout the day. Me personally, I have 6 meals per day. I just pointed a 7, but it's 6, all right? I have 6 meals per day even when I am in a calorie deficit. So I take my total amount of calories, I just kind of divide that by 6, and I try to have about the same amount of calories in each meal that I have throughout the day. But the most important thing that I make sure is that I get at least 30 grams of protein in every single meal that I eat throughout the day, because this increases your protein muscle synthesis, and this is basically the repair mechanism of your muscles. So the more often you activate this protein muscle synthesis throughout the day, the better you're going to recover from your workouts, and the more muscle mass you're going to gain and also maintain during a dieting phase. So this is crucial. This is super important, but there are way more benefits to it than just that, all right? Digestion is also improved, because if you eat 1,000 calories in one meal, your body is going to have such a hard time digesting that. Splitting that up into 500 calories in the morning, 500 calories, somewhere in the morning as well, and then 500 midday, 500 afternoon, and then 500 for dinner, makes it so much easier for your body to actually digest that food. You're not going to feel lazy, you're not going to feel, all that brain fog, that fatigue from eating. No, you're just going to stay focused throughout the whole day, having energy throughout the whole day as well, right? It's going to increase your energy levels because you constantly have food coming in. Now, the next thing it's going to help with is it's going to reduce your cravings in a dieting phase as well, because you get to eat more often throughout the day, all right? You don't have to starve for hours on end. You eat, then you eat, and then you eat again, and then you eat again. The portion sizes are just going to get smaller, but you will get used to that, all right? So make sure that you split your total calorie intake up into 4 meals minimum, but if you can, 5 to 6 is optimal. Then 2 more very, very important things that you have to do, which are extremely crucial to making the most progress even when you're cutting and also when you're bulking, is to have your meal timing on point. For breakfast and lunch, this is not as important, but for 2 meals out of your meal plan, this is extremely important. So first up is your pre-workout meal. You should have that pre-workout meal about 90 to 60 minutes before your workout. And this is so important because this is going to be the highest carb meal that you have in the day. And as we learned earlier, carbs give you energy. Carbs, they actually fuel your workout. So the performance that you're going to have if you have a pre-workout meal is going to be so much better at the gym, which means that your body gets the stimulus it actually needs to grow, all right? You're signaling your body to grow when you have a good workout, and having those carbs before your workout makes such a huge difference, all right? I've coached so many people that came into the coaching, they didn't have a pre-workout meal, and then they went on my meal plans with the right structure, with this pre-workout meal included, and they were like, holy shit, I'm making so much progress even though I'm dieting right now, even though I am in a calorie deficit. Like, I've struggled with that for so many years. I never had energy when I was dieting, and now all of a sudden they are making more progress than they've ever made before just because of that one switch, all right? So have this pre-workout meal. This is extremely important. And in a second here, I'm going to go through exactly what I like to do as a pre-workout meal, fast digestible carbs and all that. But before I do, let's cover the next important meal, which is going to be your dinner, all right? The meal timing on this is also going to be very important because you don't want to eat too late. If you eat too late, if you eat right before you go to bed, your body is still going to be busy digesting all that food, which is going to make it harder for you to fall asleep. Think about a time when, you went out with your family, right, for dinner, and you ate a lot. You came home, and even though you felt tired from the food, it was hard for you to fall asleep just because your stomach was working, your whole body temperature was up, you were sweating maybe underneath those sheets just because you ate so much food right before going into bed. So make sure that you eat your last meal of the day at least 2 hours before you go to bed, because by that time it will probably be digested for the most part, and you can still get that quality sleep in that you also need in a dieting phase. All right, that's another super key point, but I'm going to touch on that in another video. But with that being said, it just helps you sleep better, and therefore it helps you recover better. And then, as I also mentioned at the beginning of this part, you want to make sure that each meal has at least 25 grams of protein, but 30 grams is better, all right? There's a certain amount of protein that you actually need in order to stimulate that protein muscle synthesis in your body, and if you have a meal that only has 10 grams, if you have a meal that only has 5 grams, it's not going to work. So the meal timing, splitting it up into those 5 meals isn't really going to work as well for you as if you were to do 30 grams of protein in each one of those meals. So make sure that you keep all of those points in mind. Now that you have all the information about the structure that you need in order to make your meal plans, it is time to fill them up with actual foods. So let's get into that. To fill up your meal plans with foods now, you need 2 things. First of all, you need a food database. In this example, I'm going to use MyFitnessPal. It's a tracking app. It's super convenient and it has a ton of food in its database. Plus, you can also use a barcode scanner on the app to actually scan the food, and then it tells you exactly what is included. So it's going to tell you the calories and the macros for that food, and this is super easy. You can download the app for free. This is not an advertisement, nothing like that, but you can use this app. I've used it for many years in the past and I would highly recommend it. Now, the next thing that you need is my coaching template for meal plans, because once you have all the foods tracked in MyFitnessPal, you actually want to convert that into a set meal plan. Why do you want to work with meal plans instead of just using that tracking app? There's plenty of reasons why meal plans, why structured meal plans are superior to just tracking your food on a daily basis. When you're using a tracking app, you just have too many options. That's the biggest one, all right? You could go into the day with no structure. You could scan this food and then the next food and then just come up with another meal for lunch, and then for dinner you have 1,000 calories still open and you're not hitting your protein goal. So it's kind of hard to actually stick to the macros and calories that you've made for yourself when you're just using a tracking app, compared to when you have the structured meal plans. You're going to see exactly what you have to eat, when you have to eat it, in which order you have to eat those foods. And with the set meal plans, there is no room for error. You're always going to be 100% on track as long as you're sticking to those meal plans. So that is why I use those meal plans to get the best results myself, but also use them for my clients so that they can get the best results possible as well. But as I said, in this example, we're still going to use MyFitnessPal to actually log in all the foods. So let's do that right now. I'm going to use my phone here and I'm going to go into MyFitnessPal. So the first thing that you want to do in this app is you want to go to the More tab. So you click on that, then you click on Goals, and then when you download the app for the first time, it'll probably ask you for all your information, which is fine, which is filled out here at the top. We're going to ignore that completely, all right? You click on the More tab, and then you go on to Calorie, Carbs, Protein, and Fat Goals. Now, once you've clicked on here, you can make adjustments to this page. And from what we calculated earlier, we know that our intake is going to be 2,580 calories on a training day. So we're going to plug that in right now. And then for the split that we have with the macros, this is about right. The protein needs to be a little bit higher and the fat is fine. We got to reduce the carbs slightly, and there we go. This is exactly what we're looking for. And we don't have to stick to those exact numbers. I'm going to show you here how we are actually going to make those meal plans now in a second. These are just here for, your orientation. Now, you go back in here, you click on diary, and then on the diary, you can add foods. For breakfast, I'm just going to click on add food. And in this example, I am going to make something that is very similar to the meal plans that I'm using myself at the moment. So for breakfast, we're going to use eggs, all right, as our protein source and as a healthy fat source. We're just gonna do 4 eggs, and then we will do 2 slices of whole grain bread. With those meal plans, you wanna make sure that you stick to whole foods mainly, okay? This is so much better for your body than those processed foods that you can get at the supermarket, because those super processed foods, they will make you crave even more unhealthy stuff. And with those whole foods, it is just so much healthier and you won't get those cravings on top. So we have eggs, we have whole grain bread. Now I like to throw in 1 kiwi and then also some blackberries. We find those, and I already have all those foods scanned with the barcode, right? Just as an example, the barcode, you would be able to click it and then you can just scan a code right here and it would read the information from that food just like that. Now we have that. I'm going to put in some butter as well, just because we want to cook those eggs and some butter. And this would be my stats for the breakfast, right? Now it tells you 615 calories total. The next step would be to transfer this into our Google Sheets, and I'm going to show you exactly how we will do that right now. Okay, so I have the Google Sheets opened right now, and this is the structure that we're going to go with. Right here, I have several meals open. We have meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4. As I said, 4 should be the minimum for you, but 6 is even better. In this example, I will probably use 6 meals. Now, with the structure here, you have your macronutrients, you have your protein sources, carb sources, fat sources, vegetables, and supplements. And now we can go ahead and plug in our information. So on MyFitnessPal, once you have tracked that food, you're just going to click on it. So click on your eggs. This is going to show you exactly what is included in those eggs. So the ingredient here is going to be whole eggs. The serving size is going to be 4. The total amount of calories from those 4 eggs is 240. The protein is 25 grams. Carbs is 0, fat is 16. Now we have our eggs tracked in here. You go out of that tab, then you click on the whole grain bread. For this one, I'm just going to write down whole grain bread, 2 slices. The calories are going to be 220, 10 grams of protein, 34 grams of carbs, and 3 grams of fat. Now, more carb sources are going to be our kiwi, which is 1 fruit. We have 48 calories, 0.8 grams of protein, 8.3 grams of carbs, and 0.3 of fat. 75 grams of blackberries coming in next. This is going to be 75 grams, calories 32, protein is 1, carbs are 3.2, and fat is 0.4. And then we have our butter as the last ingredient in this meal. The calories are going to be 74, the protein is going to be 0.1, and your carbs are going to be 0.12 and 8.2 in fat. And now in the Google Sheet, you have the exact structure that you're going to follow for the next weeks and months until you get in the best shape of your life. So all you have to do is just open up this sheet, look at it, you see exactly what you're going to have for breakfast, and then you can make this meal every single day, eat it, and you're going to hit those exact numbers that are down there. All right, as I said earlier, there's no room for error. You're always going to hit those numbers, and I'm going to fill this sheet out here in a second. We're not going to do the whole sheet together, but I'm going to fill this out in a second and then get back to you, and then I'm going to walk you through exactly how I like to structure my meal plans. So stay tuned for that. Okay, so I just got done filling everything out in those meal plans. As you remember, we have one for the training day and we have one for the rest day. So I'm just going to walk you through the structure that I used in order to get into the best shape of my life. All right, these are not my exact meal plans, but the meals in there are basically the ones that I used, obviously adjusted to the example client that we have right now. So 6 foot 1, 220, wants to get to 180, right? In my case, I was going from 270 to 205. I'm 6 foot 3, so my calorie intake on my cut was slightly higher. I was eating about 2.9k, I think, throughout most of my cut, and this is what we're left with in this case. All right, so let's get right into that. Now, as you were already able to see, the breakfast, I did that with you. Now on the top of the page, this is really cool because I have a formula in here that adds up all the meals that you have in your meal plan. So the calories from here, the calories from here, and the next meal, they are all on top, added up. So this is the number that we get from the meal plan that we have right here. We can see the calorie intake, we can see the protein intake, the carbohydrate intake, as well as the fat intake. And these numbers are very, very close to what we calculated with ChatGPT earlier. As I said, most importantly, protein is high, the calories are there, we are in a deficit. The calories from ChatGPT, I think, were 2.58k, so we're only off by 5 calories. Now, breakfast, you have it right here. Then, next up is the pre-workout meal. As I said, this is 60 to 90 minutes before your workout, and as you can see, this has a lot of carbs. These are coming mainly from cream of rice. This is my absolute favorite pre-workout meal of all time. And there is a cream of rice here in the United States. It's called Elevate. It tastes amazing, all right? You can get chocolate flavor, you could get peanut butter flavor, you can get all these different flavors, and this meal really tastes like a dessert, and it's going to fuel your workout. So this is filled with fast digestible carbs and some protein that will allow you to have the best workouts of your entire life. So please start having this and follow the recipe that I'm going to link here for the example meal plans that I will include in the caption of this video. Okay, just follow the recipe and you will love this meal. Then we have a post-workout shake. I don't really count this as a meal just because it's a protein shake. All right, this is, you just drink it, but we still get protein in post-workout, which is going to be crucial in order to build up that muscle again. And especially when after your workout you can't immediately go home, you can't immediately eat and use a microwave or whatever. This is super convenient because it allows you to kind of collapse that window in which you can't get any protein in. Now, this is my third meal of the day. Now, after that, we have meal number 4, which would be lunch 1. I like to use ground bison and sweet potato with some asparagus as the vegetable source here. Ground bison is amazing because the micronutrient profile is super rich, as it is with all red meats, and then at the same time it's very low in fat. So it's lower in fat than most ground beefs that you can get. Obviously you could also get your super lean ground beef, but the ground bison is amazing in my opinion. Now the sweet potato alongside with that, and then also the asparagus, and this comes out at 430 calories, a lot of protein, some carbs, and also a good amount of fat. Now after that we have chicken breast with olive oil, just cooked in a pan or in the oven, whatever you prefer, and then some vegetables on the side. And then for dinner we have a fat-free Greek yogurt bowl with granola, berry blend, honey, and dark chocolate as the healthy fat source. And with those meal plans, the cool thing is that you can adjust those with, foods that you actually like. You can fill out those meal plans with stuff that you like, all right? For a time, I've done protein pancakes in the morning. You can swap out those food sources, but I want you to make sure that you're actually using those meal plans instead of just tracking your food in MyFitnessPal, because I know for a fact that after some time of tracking it in that app, you're going to fall off. And with the meal plans, you are going to stay consistent. I know that. And if you want to adjust anything in those meal plans, all you have to do is, I'm going to show you this right here. So let's say you want to swap out, which meal do we want to swap out, guys? Let's say we're just going to do a basic example here, all right? You want to swap out the chicken breast. Let's say you're tired of the chicken breast, you don't want to do that anymore. So all you have to do is just go into MyFitnessPal. I'm going to do that here in a second, so you also see what it looks like with all the foods in there. So you're going to click on the chicken breast, and what you would do is just delete that out of the profile, and then add food. You would search for a substitute for that. So if you want to do steak, you would go for a top sirloin because that's a very lean steak cut. Now, in order to get the same amount of calories, you would just kind of estimate first. So you can see that 250 grams is 330 calories. Now, to make up for that, I'm just going to put 150. That's like a little too much, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to use the 150, okay? So steak, lean cut, or actually I'm just going to adjust it, so that it really fits. So 140 should be more like it. 138. Obviously you're not going to cut the steak, so that it fits perfectly, but 130 is pretty much what we can do in order to get the same amount of calories. So this would be 170 instead of 172. The protein is slightly less, the carb is 0, and the fat is slightly higher. Now, what you would also do in this case is just make sure that you're still getting enough protein in, all right? Now, you would switch around some other stuff as well. You would probably increase the Greek yogurt by 50 grams, so you get more lean protein out of that. And then you can drop the dark chocolate to 15 grams, so everything just balances itself out. You get more protein from the fat-free Greek yogurt, the fat drops from the dark chocolate, because with the steak, you're getting a little more fat, you're getting a little less protein, and you always have to make sure that you adjust properly so that your calories and also the macronutrients stay at the same range that you had calculated at the very beginning. But this is what those meal plans look like. As I said, guys, super simple structure. You see exactly which ingredient is responsible for which macronutrients in all the meals. You see the exact serving size. You see the exact amount of calories and macros. At the bottom of each meal, you have a summary of that. And then at the top of the page, you can always see exactly what's going on. Now, for the rest day meal plans, same thing. I don't like to change up my meal plans. You can do that. You can have 2 totally different meal plans from training day to rest day, but I think it's way more convenient to just have the same meals on the rest day, because meal prepping gets a whole lot easier when you do it like this, right? But as I said, you can do totally different things on the rest day just to have some variety, so you don't get tired of the foods of eating that same stuff each and every day. Now, with the rest day, as I said, slightly less calories. The drop comes from reducing your carbs and a little bit of your fat. And all you would have to do for that is literally just reduce, a big carb source. So in this case, all I did in my fitness pal was reduce the cream of rice from 90 grams to 40 grams. And then I think I took out some more carbs from a different source, but that is all you have to do, guys. All right, just reduce the carbs from some source to make it fit into the rest day meal plans. And that is it when it comes to the structured meal plans in here. As I said, I'm going to leave you a template with pre-made meal plans with the structure, a similar structure that I did in this example, and all you would have to do is just use MyFitnessPal in order to make those precise adjustments with the calculations that you have made earlier in this video. So you would have to adjust to your calorie intake in order to get started with your cut. It's that simple, it's super easy, so stop making excuses and finally start doing this. Now, on top of that template, I also have something else for you, okay? So I have a full grocery list that shows you so many foods that you could choose as a carb source, as a fat source, as a protein source. And the best thing about it is that it sorts those foods into cutting and bulking foods. So you will have lower calorie options in the green color, you will have neutral options in like the yellowish color, and then you will have bulking options in the red color, just meaning that they are very calorie dense. They contain a lot of calories on 100 grams of that food. And the green ones, they are high volume foods, you could say. So an apple, for example, 100 grams, like that's a lot of apple, right? And a banana, for example, 100 grams, it's not as much when you look at the total volume of the food. So that's what that means. Now, as you can see in this sheet right here, you have all these different options. You can click on the next page. These are going to be your carb sources already sorted for you. All right, the green ones, as I said, great for cutting. The yellowish ones are great for, just staying neutral. And then you have your red ones, which would be best for bulking because they are higher in calories. Same for your protein, and then same for your fats. Make sure that you include a lot of different foods in here so that you're actually hitting your micronutrient targets as well. I'm not going to touch on the micronutrients completely in this video, but if you follow the structure that I have in those templates for you, you're going to be just fine when it comes to the micronutrients as well. And obviously I'm also going to leave that grocery list in the description of this video so you can use it for yourself to find food sources, and then all you have to do is search for it in a food database, MyFitnessPal. You already have a database right there with the grocery list, you could say, right? But in my opinion, it's a little bit easier if you just do it in MyFitnessPal, because then you can really just, adjust the amount of food that you're going to eat of that ingredient and then plug it into the meal plans. So go ahead and use the stuff that I give you, because if you do, you can make the perfect meal plans for yourself, and you're not going to struggle. You're not going to struggle anymore with cutting weight. You're not going to struggle anymore with fat loss and at the same time building muscle mass or maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. Now, the only thing that could possibly hold you back is when your metabolism adjusts to the calorie deficit, when you stop losing weight at some point. And I'm going to show you exactly what you have to do when that happens. Okay, I'm just noticing that it's getting a little dark in this room, so I'll have to adjust my lighting here in a second. But what you have to do in order to know when you actually make adjustments to your calorie intake is what I'm going to explain to you right now. So you have to track your body weight over weeks. You always have to keep track of your body weight, and you do that by you waking up in the morning, stepping on the scale on an empty stomach, and then you write that weight down. And the cool thing about it is that in the template I'm going to leave for you, it doesn't just include the meal plans, it also includes a sheet in which you're going to be able to track your body weight and so many more things. And then it also builds the average of your weight at the end of each week. And that is the most important thing, because we never go off daily weigh-ins. We always use the weekly average, and then we compare that weekly average to the previous week, and then we decide if we are going to drop the calories or if we are on track. So always look at the weekly average instead of daily weights, because they can fluctuate massively depending on how much water your body is holding, how your stress is, how your training was, how your sleep was. There's so many different things playing into that. So make sure you always look at the weekly average. Now, I'm going to go into this sheet here in a second to show you what that is actually going to look like for you and what you have to look at in order to make those adjustments. Because when your weight stagnates, you have two different options. You can either decrease your calories, so in your meal plans, you just take out calories from which macronutrient? You guys should remember, from carbs, right? So you're taking out calories from carbs, or what you can also do is increase your activity. So we said that we had 10K steps each and every day. Now we could bump that up to 12K, to 14K, to 15K, and this would also increase the amount of calories that we burn on a daily basis. So you have those two options in order to push past a plateau. But let's get into how to actually know if you are on a plateau or not. So these right here are my own check-in sheets that I used. I think this is at the start of this year. So March, yeah, like spring this year, right? I went on a mini cut. So I started going into a calorie deficit right here. And my body weight was 104.6 kgs. I'm tracking in kgs just because I am from Germany. All right, I'm not using freedom units. I'm using the metric system, but yeah, starting at 104.6 kgs. Now, as you can see, it dropped pretty fast, and that is mainly because I lost a lot of water weight. When you start your cut, your body is going to flush out a lot of water weight, and that's where that drop is coming from. But as you can see down here, this is the average for week 1. Now, the average for week 2 is 101.6 kilograms. Now, that is already a 1 kilogram difference, and this is 1.5 pounds, a little more than 1.5 pounds actually. So this is exactly what I was looking for. I was on track perfectly. Now, the week after that, I was at the same weight for the weekly average. So what happened? Well, I had a cheat day on this Friday. I ate 1,000 calories extra from protein bars. So my weight bumped up on that day. Before that, it was going down, right? You can see right here. I'm going to zoom in just to make it easier for you. So you can see right here that at the start of the week, it went down, it went down. I had a low weigh-in at 100.7, but then it bumped up again because of the cheat meal that I had here. So I was holding more water weight. This was not fat gain, this was mostly water, but because I had that cheat meal, it bumped up my weight to 2.3 kgs. And then after that, it went down again. So I didn't make adjustments here because I knew this was coming from the cheat meal. Then I went into the next week with the same meal plans that I had used ever since I started this cut, and I made more progress because I was sabotaging myself right here with that cheat meal. But from my experience, I knew that it was only because of that cheat meal. So I didn't panic. I didn't drop my calories any further. I knew where that weight increase was coming from. All I had to do is just stop having that cheat meal, and then I was able to drop more weight this week. After that, it continued just like that. I went down again, and I went down again in the following week, and I even went down after that in the following week. So you guys see that sometimes you shouldn't panic, you shouldn't make adjustments too fast. You just have to look at your check-in sheets, you have to check out what's going on, and then you make the decision whether or not you should drop the calories even further, or if you should increase the steps or your activity in general. Now, what I could have done here, let's just use one of those weeks as an example. So let me say this week I only lost 400 grams in total. I think I also had a cheat meal. Yeah, if I remember correctly, this was like a cheat day, which is why the weight went up back here again. So let me try to give you guys a good example. I'm just gonna use this one, even though I already explained to you why my weight was the same. But if at the end of a week your weight is still dropping, even though the weekly average is basically the same as last week, that is when you can still continue with your current workout, with your current meal plans, with your current calorie intake, because this indicates that the week after that is going to drop. All right, in the week after that, you're probably going to see a big drop in weight, as long as the end of the previous week is showing that trend. So in that case, even when the weekly average is the same, you would stay with the same meal plans for at least another week to see what happens before making any crazy adjustments. Because as I said at the very beginning of this video, you don't want to go into too much of a deficit, because this will definitely crash your hormones and the energy in your workouts will be non-existent. You won't be able to make any progress. It'll just be awful for you. So always keep track of your body weight so that you actually know what you have to do with your calorie intake and how you have to adjust it over time. In the long run, however, at some point you will probably have to adjust your calorie intake, just because your body's metabolism adjusts to the calorie intake. All right, the less you feed your body, the more your metabolism will slow down, and then at some point it will have adjusted to your new calorie intake as you lose more weight. So you will have to drop your calories further. I like to just increase my activity levels, because I know that as long as I can eat more food, my performance in the workouts will stay the same, and that should be your main priority during a cutting phase. All right, let it be light. Well, that is it for this video. You now have the template. You now have all the information that you need in order to make the perfect meal plans for yourself. You know how to calculate your calorie intake, your BMR, your TDEE. You know exactly what split you should use for your macronutrients. You know how to prompt it into ChatGPT to get exactly the numbers that you're looking for, and you also know how to use MyFitnessPal. You also know how to plug that information into my meal plan template, and you have the template, all right? And not just the template, but what I'm going to leave for you in the description of this video is going to be a full coaching template. It will include your check-in sheets, the one that I showed you at the very end, your meal plans that are already filled out. You only have to make adjustments to those. It will include a whole workout program that is structured exactly like the workout program I used on my cut. So as long as you execute on the workout program, as long as you adjust those meal plans to your needs, to your goals, to whatever weight you want to cut to, you will make insane amount of progress over the next couple of months. But you will have to do the work, all right? If you don't do this, if you don't use this information, it will mean nothing. It will be meaningless. It will do absolutely nothing for you that you just watched this video. So please do yourself a favor and actually use those things, because you clicked on this video because you wanted to make progress. You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, and you wanted to do the same thing. You finally wanted to get back into shape, or get into shape for the first time, and you now have all the information. There is no more excuses. All you have to do is simply get started. And if you want to take it to the next level, like so many of my clients have done in the past, if you want to get everything customized to you, if you want everything completely optimized so that by the end of your cutting phase you look like the best version of yourself, you look like a version of yourself that you didn't even think existed, you can now book a qualification call with me in the first link of the description of this video. And in that call we will talk specifically about what I am going to help you with and how we are going to make your cutting transformation absolutely insane. But be advised that I only work with people who are actually serious. All right, the name of my brand is Team Dedication Coaching. You have to be dedicated enough to even make it into the team. So if you don't have that drive, if you don't have that fire, don't even book a call with me, because I will not take you into the team. But if you have that, if you truly want to make that change, if you truly want to take it to the next level, apply now and we will talk soon. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.